Hey everyone, just want to tell you a little story about this guitar right here. This was my grandpa's guitar, and this was the guitar that I learned how to play on. My dad started playing in around 58 or 59, and he said that this guitar was, or I should say my grandpa already had this guitar at that time. So, not positive on the year. I've looked in everything, everywhere for, serial numbers and everything, and just can't find any. But anyway, this was the guitar. The story is that for myself, for playing, the Mocambos had reunited in '79, and I was wanting to learn how to play the guitar around that same time, and so I started learning, and I wanted an electric guitar, but my dad said no, and he said, if you play this guitar for a year, then I'll know that you're serious, and then I'll buy you an electric guitar. So that's what I did. And what was going on was my grandpa would use this guitar was at my grandpa's house, and my grandpa would be using his mandolin to write all the horn parts, or this little organ that he had to write all the horn parts for Mocambo music. And then my dad would be in the room with him with this guitar, figuring out the chord progressions from the records, stuff like that, or the stuff like that. And so I would learn with this guitar. I was able to take it home. And another thing is that I basically taught myself, though my dad gave me the guidance, only because I thought at that time, with everyone knowing that my dad was a guitar player and everything, that everyone just assumed that he taught me. So he bought me a Mel Bay book, #1, and so I learned on that. But at the same time, you see, he was there for any questions I had, so he helped me out a great deal. But we didn't necessarily have lessons where I sat down, weekly or every couple of days, twice a week, and played for him, things like that. It didn't happen that way. I just kind of went at my own pace. So I had that Mel Bay book and learned, like you do. But this guitar, at that time, we would go over to my grandpa's on Sunday nights, and this guitar would either be there or it would be at our house. And my cousins and I, we would play football and basketball in my grandpa's room during the winter times, winter months, I should say. But we would also listen to music at times. And so we were listening to that first Chicago Greatest Hits album, the white one where they're like painting or whatever. And when at the end of the night, I asked my dad to show me that riff of the song. And so he showed it to me. And so this was the first riff that I ever learned on the guitar. And it was of course, back then it probably sounded the way I had to play it. I could only use one finger. I couldn't do two at the time yet. It was probably like stuff like that. And so let me tell you, on this guitar, learning that, getting a clean F chord was hard. It was more like for a long time. And so that first Mel Bay book had all the open chords in it, so I would learn all those chords like that. And eventually my dad wrote out all the bar chords for me, so the major, minor, 7, minor 7, 6s, minor 6, 9, minor 9s, 13s, diminished, augmented. These were all the chords that I would learn on here. And then my grandpa, in his room, he also had these books, these combo orc books and types of books like this, and they would have like chord changes in them and stuff like that, if you can see that. And these were the books that I would use to try to get my timing down as I was learning the chords. And so those of you that are guitar players, you know that when you're first learning, so like and then when you switch to another chord, it takes you a couple seconds to try to get there, and then you'll be like one finger at a time or something like that. And so I would use these books, just playing the chord progressions, to try to go, or something like a great tools for that. And then the keyboard player for the Macombos, organ player, his name was Steve Dempsey, and he let me have his, or borrow at the time, but I still have it. It's all tore up now, a fake book, and that's a thing that has like 500 songs in it. And I would do the same thing with those chord progressions that I would see on the song. Some of the songs I was familiar with, some of them I wasn't familiar with. But again, it was more of a learning how to do it in time to go from one chord to the other. And then I had the Macombo guitar book also, because I wasn't in the Macombos yet during my first year. And so I learned all those good Sonora Santanera boleros, you know, the I would learn all those with this guitar, learning how to go in time with that. Funny story about my grandpa was when I was doing that one time, I was in his room with this guitar and I was going through the Macombo book or something like that, and it called for a B flat 13. And I couldn't make that yet in time. So say if it went like C minor 7 to F7 to B flat 13, I was going doing like a B flat 7. And my grandpa happened to be walking by and he heard that. And he said, if the composer had wanted a 7th, he would have written a 7th. Now play the 13. And so that's always a funny story for me because he heard that 1, there's the 13, there's the 7. He heard that 1, he heard that 13th note not being played, and he knew what song it was, and he knew that there was supposed to be a 13th chord. So again, that's, and my cousin Al can testify to that that's what it was like with our grandpa. He wanted everything just right. And anyone who was in the Macombos when he was in there knows that too, that he wanted his horns and everything just played just right the way it was supposed to be written. And so anyway, after my grandpa passed, my cousin Al had this guitar, and then in 2011, he called me up, 2011, 2012, called me up and said he wanted to give it to me. And so I took it up to Mike Wallace, and he cleaned it up and everything for me, put some new tuning pegs on it because those were all tore up. And so I've had it ever since then here. But this was the guitar that I learned on. It's actually the guitar my dad learned on also. I think my cousin Daniel, when he was taking some guitar lessons, he played this guitar. And, you know, probably my brother probably used this guitar also. But it was always there in the house. And again, like I said, I don't know the exact year because I can't see anything in there as far as looking for serial numbers or anything like that. But this was the guitar that started it all for me. And this was the first riff. And my dad showed me on this guitar or stuff like that. Again, like I said, I taught myself, but at the same time when I had questions, he would show me things that I was inquiring about, but we never literally had like lessons where we sat down together. But this is the guitar, everyone, and this is the guitar that I used, learned on, and it's still fun to play, even for nostalgia's sake. Hey, thanks for watching.